CMD and the MD and CEO of the Kotak Bank, to be here exclusively with us as the for us for this for the MSME sector, which is extremely important, and it's great to have. And as all of us know, Mr. Uday Kotak is also now the president of the CII. So welcome both the gentlemen, and I'd just like to say, just a few words about our two very eminent panelists who have joined, who understand the pulse of the MSME sector so very well. They deal with the lifeline, if I can say, of the MSME sector. Finance is really the lifeline, and they deal with it, and they understand how the MSME sector, who grows, who is not growing, who is not doing well, who is just about to fall sick, and who will fall sick. All of that they understand so very well, with the lifeline to the sector that they really have in their hands. So, ladies and gentlemen, my pleasure to actually present to you the chairman of the State Bank of India, the nation's largest lender, if one can say, and Mr. Rajneesh Kumar. His career spans 40 plus years, actually, and he has held various important positions, as we know, in his vast experience in handling large credit, project finance, foreign exchange, retail banking, and so on and so forth. And he's also leading the largest commercial bank, as all of us know, in India in terms of assets or deposits or profits, branches, number of customers, and even employees. So under his huge sense, very strong leadership and guidance, if one can say, in the year 2018, the SBI actually won the award for the best bank India and the Global Finance World's Best Bank Awards. And the latest being, of course, his award on the best in the rural outreach, and given by the Business Today, Money Today Financial Award. So very important in terms of the MSME and the way it evolves in our country. Mr. Uday Kotak, as you know, is the president of the CII and also the MD and CEO of Kotak Mahindra Bank. More than 70,000 employees is what he deals with, and Uday has served as the chairman of SEBI constituted Corporate Governance Committee and was appointed by the Government of India on a very significant role in terms of a public service as a non-executive chairman of the new ILNFS board, with a mandate to steer one of India's largest NBFCs, the ILFS, of course, and out of a huge crisis, and that it was caught up in, and which Uday has taken up very, one sees the way things have evolved since his taking over with the new board. And he's also the member of several advisory panels internationally, and he is also, of course, again, another person who is recipient of many awards, latest being, of course, his Lifetime Achievement Awards at Magna Awards 2019 by Business World. So here we are with these two very important and very related, if I can say, gentlemen, to talk to the MSMEs on this significant day. Ladies and gentlemen, as you all our participants would perhaps know today, 2017 in April 2017, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution recognizing the very crucial role that the micro, the medium, the small enterprises play around the world, and what they have contributed in terms of the 2030 agenda for sustainable development. So world over, really, the MSME sector, if one sees, they employ more than 50% of the total workforce that we have. And all the countries are acknowledging very strongly the contribution made by the MSME sector to the economy and, of course, to their respective GDPs, while working out various recovery plans for the sector, which also has been severely affected by the pandemic. The government has really kept MSMEs in many countries uppermost in their mind, as it has brought out its huge impacts. So I would really like to stop here, because people are really interested in listening to these two leading gentlemen that we have with us over here. But I'd like to first start by asking both of them, and I'll start with Mr. Rajneesh Kumar, on what is that important message that you would like to give uh, to the MSMEs on this very special day for theirs, in terms of how they can, about their role in the country, about their role in the business, about how they can move forward. So what are those first few critical opening comments that you will have, Mr. Rajneesh Kumar, for the MSME with whom you have seen so very closely over the last many years, Mr. Rajneesh Kumar?
Thank you so much for the nice introduction. And today's day, as you mentioned, is very important. Across the globe, every country, MSMEs play very critical. And in a country like India, where the population size is big, it's very important that MSME, they create employment, they create self-employment, and they are an integral part of the supply chains worldwide. And even if the word is MSME, but any large corporate, MSMEs would be a very large part of the supply chain. And as far as uh, the last mile uh, reach is concerned, there also it is the MSMEs which play a very critical role. And they are present across the segments. It is not that they are present in any particular segment. Over a period of time, what has also happened that the innovation and the technology, it is playing a very critical role. In our country, the yes, it has brought about a very major change around the way businesses are done and organized. And I can say that when we speak today, and we are speaking at a time when we are dealing with an unprecedented situation, again, across the globe, and India being no exception, because of COVID-19. Scenario, it is a fact that MSMEs, they are more vulnerable. But at the same time, the government has come out with many measures to support. And it is around supporting the requirement for working capital, which is the immediate need. It is around providing the equity. It is providing the funding support for restructuring of MSMEs. And as a result of so many measures initiated, and of course, the change in the definition of MSME, many significant steps which government has taken, definitely this would help in I can say reducing the pain. It will not be able to completely maybe eliminate the pain, but it will definitely help the MSMEs to fight out this peculiar and a unique situation. And as far as the support from the banking system is concerned, still we all know that it is a reality that the MSMEs are still dependent to a very large extent on the informal finance rather than the formal finance. But today, as we speak, as I said, that because of the digitization, because of the technology, there's a huge change in the way the banks are providing financial support to MSMEs. Maybe at times, because of the knowledge gap, the MSMEs are unable to take benefit of all these schemes. And at times, it is the knowledge gap even amongst the bankers at the branch level or down the line, where very often we find that it leads to the issues of that getting the credit from the banking system is not so easy. But on this special day, I would definitely like to express my gratitude to the entire MSME community for the very patriotic and significant role they are playing in the overall economic growth of the country. And we are in a difficult situation, but we will be able to come out of this difficult situation only because that our MSME would be able to show the required resilience. It is the spirit of entrepreneurship which would survive.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for those opening comments. We'll come back to you very, very shortly. I'll now really like to move to Mr. Uday Kotak. And while you give your message, Mr. Kotak, I'd like to also you to also focus on you have coined a very strong theme for CII for this year. How do you expect also the MSMEs to play a role in that theme which you have set for the CII for this year? Besides other messages, if you can also elaborate on that.
Thank you, Chandrajit. And first of all, a very warm welcome to all the members of the MSME community. And the message and the theme for CII, which we have laid out this year, is building India for a new world, lives, livelihood, and growth. And I'm a believer that the backbone of a country is the MSME sector. And if India and a new India has to be built for a new world, we will have to have a very vibrant and a dynamic MSME sector, which is also open to change, to get into a different basis for the future. And here I share with Rajneesh the commitment of the financial system to find solutions for MSMEs. And I think the government is also very, very alert and alive to the importance of the MSME sector. The recent redefinition of limits for what is micro, what is small, and what is medium is with an objective that we don't want a micro to remain micro. We want to allow them to grow. And therefore, the limits have been widened, which enables an MSME to grow within the different definitions and get larger. Because it is only over a period of time that small companies can become large companies. And it is here, therefore, that a desire to build a new India with MSME sector as a very integral part of it is important. And my sense is that I am a believer that there are two important requirements for sustainable growth of the MSME sector in India. First, I think many MSMEs have great ideas, have great entrepreneurship, but very often need risk capital. Therefore, any scheme by the government or by private initiative to provide more risk equity capital for the MSME sector will enable them to withstand the shocks out of sudden change in the external environment. Therefore, I am of the view that a availability of risk capital, whether it is venture, whether it is angel, and development of an angel and a venture risk capital in India is crucial. Indian savings are not going enough towards risk capital, and we need to channelize risk capital available for business and industry with a particular focus on the MSME sector, because equity bases of many MSMEs turn out to be a little weak, and as bankers we find that an issue from time to time. And therefore, strengthening the equity base by getting an external investor if required for great ideas is something which we must encourage even further. But inevitably, when we get outside risk capital, the next important question which comes is the quality of how these MSMEs govern themselves, and what are the processes, how are they making sure, while they are not overburdened with the cost of governance and compliance, some basic tenets of principles of good running of a business, like proper accounting, proper audits, proper maintenance of stocks, ensuring that the the money in the business remains in the business and is not moved to other areas like real estate or something else. Therefore, basic housekeeping discipline which comes with the aspiration for growth. Therefore, in a nutshell, availability of risk capital, proper governance is the bedrock of making a better future for MSMEs. And I give the example of one of the most advanced countries in the world, whose entire growth, or very large part of its growth, has been on the back of the MSME sector, and that is Germany. Germany has become a manufacturing hub for the world. It's one of the most powerful export-oriented countries in the world. It is into engineering, precision, a whole host of items. And along with that, a very strong MSME sector which Germany has built. India needs to have some of those ideas taken and really leverage the MSME sector for transforming India's future. It will create a lot more jobs, and I think it will be the crucial thing for CII's theme of lives, livelihood, and growth, and building India for a new world.
Thank you, Uday. Thank you for those introductory remarks. One of the things I like to ask, and people have been talking about it, and the most talked about thing in the recent past in the MSME scheme of things have been the new definition of MSME. And Mr. Rajnish Kumar, you alluded to it as you spoke about it. The new, which will be the new definition, comes into force on the 1st of July, and the composite criteria of investment and turnover for classification and other clarifications have been issued, as you know, yesterday only by the Ministry of MSME through its official gazette. How do you think that this will play out when it comes to financing and providing credit? I'll ask both the gentlemen the same, both the private sector perspective and the public sector perspective. Mr. Kumar?
As far as financing is concerned, definitely there are obligations around what we call priority sector lending for all the banks in the country, and there is a target that 40% of the lending has to be to the priority sectors, and 18% of course is for agriculture, and MSME constitute a very important constituent in that priority sector lending for the banks. And with the change in the definition, the flow of credit to the MSME, the banks will be encouraged to lend. That encouragement is there, but the universe gets widened. And this MSME definition was not revised for quite some time. And it was a demand that we need to have uniformity. Earlier, there were several clarifications around services separate, manufacturing separate. But now we have a simple definition which takes into account both the turnover as well as the investment in plant and machinery. So I think it's a very good move. It is a forward-looking move, and it should help in increasing the flow of the credit to the MSMEs, and it would also enable the banks to achieve their private sector lending target.
Right. Thanks, Uday. As you answer this question, I'll also like you to focus on the NBFCs who have played a very significant role in financing the MSME sector. And given the current changes that are taking place in the NBFC segment, how do you see them playing complementary efforts to the banks, and are they in a position really to do so?
See, my view is NBFC sector is clearly an extension of the financial sector to be able to reach out a larger part of India and Indian business. And NBFCs will continue to have a role and an important role. But as we stand today, between public sector banks led by State Bank of India, the private sector banks, and the NBFC sector, there is enough ability to reach out and make sure that credit is available. Therefore, if there are pockets of NBFCs which are going through a challenging time, I think there is enough alternative for good quality MSMEs which are available. I don't think there is an issue about an option. What I would strongly believe is that for the MSME sector, we must also find out ways for strengthening how they run themselves. And that is where an institution like CII, including some sort of a center or any other process which we can offer as CII to get them to some of the basic requirements which will make their businesses more sustainable, is important. And I think this is an important aspect we need to cover. One is make sure financing is available, but when financing is a challenge, what are the reasons for the challenge, and what do the MSMEs need to get themselves in better shape? I think we need both. We need availability, but also sustainability of the underlying companies as well.
Right. Right. Thank you. Thank you both for your comments. I'd like to move to another more macro level question, which is being asked by many of our members. And the CII membership of the MSME, which is our more than 60% of our members are from the MSME category. But what I would like to say about them is these are the more, if one can say, a more evolved MSMEs group, which run themselves relatively efficiently, which also looks at technology in a way like what Mr. Rajnish Kumar also mentioned in his opening comments. They are technologically well savvy, if I may say so. They are, some of them have looked through, passed through generations, not just only the first generation, but they have moved on, etc. But then there is a feeling amongst the general MSME category where finance becomes very much important for them. The availability of finance, the availability of credit becomes such an important factor for any MSME. But the feeling that our membership offline, they would probably not want to talk to you at times directly, but they do talk to us many a times, that when it comes to credit, when it comes to the cost of finance, the MSME suffers more. I mean, the effective interest that we pay is much more than the others. It's very difficult for us to get finance out. But for us to get finance out, if it is that much difficult, because we are the more, it goes to the better quote unquote better MSMEs. But unless our hands are well held by the financial institutions, how do we evolve? So there is always this conflict, which is sometimes an underlying current and sometimes very strong, that comes up. Both your messages on this count would be very comforting for our MSME membership. Well, please go ahead.
Yeah, so the methods of lending, now they've evolved. And what is happening that most of the banks, I would say today, they're making use of digital technologies. MSME, as we know that it is also a wide spectrum. And you yourself mentioned that the members of CII that would be more evolved, they would be more tech savvy. But there are today different products, I can say, which are available. And the role of technology has played a very critical role. And I will give you just one example. About more than 2 years ago, there was a platform launched, TSB 59 minutes loan. And the businesses where they are registered for, say, GST. And using the GST data, income tax data, and the credit history of a unit, income tax returns, the analytics, using the analytics, the sanction is almost automatic through that platform. So this is one example. Time to time, there have been various committees of Reserve Bank of India also who have addressed this issue. So today, if there is an MSME where there is a turnover of, say, up to 5 crore, the assessment is very simple, and up to 20% of the turnover, and which now today gets verified through GST, then 20% of the turnover, it is very easy to get that limit. And earlier, and before we moved to technology, the main issue always came about how do we verify the financial statements? In my view, now with so much data available through GST, through the MCA site, ROC site, the absence of that data is not felt. So you have verifiable data now, and which can be cross-checked. As I was mentioning, that when you used a couple of data points like the turnover in the account, the GST paid, the income tax paid, and when you correlate, then the assessment becomes easy. Then similarly, for smaller entities, there are collateral-free loans which are available and which are guaranteed under the CGT MSE schemes, which are run by SIDBI and managed by SIDBI. So it is not that there is a dearth of the schemes or the products for financing the MSME. But the fact of the matter is that vulnerability of MSME is much higher. And because they are more vulnerable and the default ratio is higher, so that's why that gets reflected in the price. But because, as I said, that there are obligations on the bank, there is an encouragement from both the government and the Reserve Bank of India to set aside a certain amount, as I said, under priority sector lending. It is obligatory for the banks to lend within that 40%, and even if we exclude 18% for the agriculture, even then we have 22% of the lending for the MSMEs. So what has changed? And even in SBI today, even for Mudra loans, there is an end-to-end digitized product. So the way to look at it is that one, use of technology in lending, which uses the data available, both specific to the unit and around the what we call big data. So that is enabling the banks to now underwrite in a much more scientific way. And delivery has become better. And one example is the latest example around the guaranteed emergency credit line or a 20% top-up loan where 3 lakh crore has been set aside. In all banks, if you look at it, PSBs as well as private sector banks, they have done very well. And in a month, the State Bank alone, we have sanctioned more than 4 lakh loans. So sanctioning more than 4 lakh loans, 19,000 crore. If we do it manually and don't use technology, it is not possible. And still, there may be issues. I'm not saying there are not issues, but the hesitance, if any, on the part of the formal banking system, it is a result of the high vulnerability of the MSME.
Right, right. So it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg situation at times. And is the private sector more conservative and more risk averse, Uday?
No, I would like to say the private sector is obviously has to keep in mind that depositors' trust in the private sector is even more hard-earned than the depositors' trust in the public sector bank, because public sector bank has a natural advantage of the state behind it. In the case of a private sector bank, we have got to constantly earn the trust of our depositors, and we have to maintain that confidence at any cost. Therefore, if there is some conservatism with some part of private sector, it's coming with a very singular objective that we are fundamentally in this business, keeping in mind our primary objective is protection of our depositors' money.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. So I will now take we have come to half time mark of our session. So I'll really open it up to some of our members who are from the small and the medium sector to pose questions to these two outstanding gentlemen that we have here with us. And I'll first move to Mr. Ashok Saigal. Mr. Ashok Saigal is from a company called, he's a managing director of a company called Frontier Technologies, based out of Gurgaon. And also he is incidentally the co-chairman of the CII's MSME Council. Ashok ji.
Thank you, CV. Question principally to Mr. Uday Kotak. Feedback we have from our members, MSME members, is that the PSPs have been doing an excellent job. And I think the data put out by SBI shows that they have released a very large number of loans as well as a large value of loans. But Mr. Kotak, the feedback we are getting from the members of the private sector banks is a little different. They say the private sector banks are taking longer to sanction the loans. It's not being done at the branch level. Papers are being sent to a central place. And the rate of interest being charged is also higher than in the public sector banks. So what do you think the private sector banks should be doing to help the MSMEs in this hour of need and come on par with the PSBs?
My view is that private sector banks, in the case of the guaranteed loans, which is under the scheme, uh, have taken a little longer than the public sector banks. And I must compliment Rajneesh and his team for moving at great speed. So I do accept that as something which is a absolutely correct statement. Having said that, Ashok, just watch over the next 2 to 3 to 4 weeks. This particular scheme of the government of India, which is guaranteeing for a 20% additional facility to all MSMEs, eligible MSMEs, will pick up great momentum, whether it's public sector or private sector. And it's just a question about getting the house in better organized shape. As I understand, with many of the banks, they started, private sector banks started a few days later, but you will see now the catch up happen. And if we take a view 3 to 4 weeks from now, I think the MSME sector will be surprised at how both the private and the public sector have responded to this government guarantee scheme of 3 lakh crores, and very significant amount of monies will be disbursed within the guidelines which have been put out. Therefore, give yourself next 2, 3, 4 weeks and you will see the significant growth happen in terms of the sanctions and disbursements. The second point, as far as interest rates is concerned, I think it's pretty clear. There's a cap. The maximum rate which can be charged by banks, whether public or private sector, is already put in the scheme itself. If at all, the much higher rate has been allowed by the government for the NBFCs. And if my memory is right, it is a cap of 8.25 for banks and 14% for NBFCs. So,
9.25.
I beg your pardon?
9.25 and 14.
Yeah, 9.25 as the cap and 14, this thing subject to not more than 1% above MCLR. I think it's lower of the two, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think you will see flow going through. The interest rates are up with a cap, so there's no question of a bank charging more than the cap. And NBFCs, of course, can charge more. And if we had a conversation like this exactly a month from now, you would see a very large part of the 3 lakh crores having been dispersed both by private sector and public sector banks.
Thank you. Aapke muh ghee shakkar, and we'll talk about it after a month.
Absolutely.
Right. Very good. You know, the MSME sector as it is, it's all the entrepreneurs present here today have really struggled, and really have put in the cap of the promoter, from the marketing manager to the technology chief. They are all in one. But the issue gets much more aggravated, if one can say. The challenges get much more aggravated if the leader or the MSME lead is a woman. And I therefore really want to bring in a lady entrepreneur, somebody from Trichy, and it's Ms. Rani Muralidharan.
A very good evening to all of you. Thank you so much. I'm really indeed privileged to have two stalwarts of the banking sector of India with us. Thank you for being there. My question is straight about a cluster. This is a very specific question. So for over 50 years, Trichy has a cluster of around 500 MSMEs that are vendors to Bharat Heavy Electricals. And many of them bank with State Bank of India. 3 years back, during the downturn of the thermal power sector, most of the units were declared NPA and asked to do a one-time settlement. They hardly had any choice and they were asked to do a one-time settlement. Today, they have all become struggling SMEs who are diversifying to new avenues with the existing facilities. They have good customers, they have orders, but no banking facility due to the stigma of a one-time settlement. The COVID-19 situation has made things worse. Will SBI support such companies to revive and get back on track? If yes, what would be the procedure? Can SBI look at reviving this very vibrant cluster which has been there for more than 50 years? In fact, I am myself a 50-year-old customer of State Bank of India. That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You don't look like that you have been banking.
Well, I'm a second-generation entrepreneur. So I'm a second generation entrepreneur. Thank you.
No, I'm aware of the situation around Trichy, and this has been discussed several times, even with the ministry, and unfortunately, we have not been able to work out a solution to this problem. And once we have settled, there is a cooling period before the new facilities becomes available. But what we have found, and when we were examining this issue about a couple of months back, the issue also came around again about establishing the viability and availability of equity. And that is where we could not get any satisfactory answers that how can we revive it. But still, even today, we are open to the idea that if something can be done, we would be willing to do that. And I am ready to have a fresh look. And what can also help is that, of course, if the unit is still functioning and some restructuring can be done, then that we have to keep on a separate plane. And the latest scheme of the government, where 20,000 crore they have made available, which will be towards promoters' equity, because whenever we do any restructuring, the banks would normally expect that at least to 15 to 20% money to come in from the promoters. In many cases of restructuring, I have found that even that 15% money is not available. So though operational guidelines will be issued very shortly, but if there are some of the units which can take advantage of that scheme and get their credit facilities restructured, that would be one option. OTS, if the cooling period of earlier it used to be 5, I think we have reduced it to 3 years. So that cooling period we have to wait. And but what happens in such a situation is that unless there is very clear visibility about the viability of the unit, we again fund. So that viability has to be established.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. So I'll move on. I'll try and get as many as of our members possible to come in to ask questions. So I'll move to the western part of the country and move to Rajasthan and request Anil Sabu, the managing director of Electrolytes, and also the managing partner of Electrolytes Power, the power sector. Yeah, there you are.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Good evening to all. Thanks, President and CB, for arranging such session. Though the banks are providing 20% additional working capital limit to the existing working capital limit holders, which is guaranteed by the government. But this financial support has a cap of 100 crore and maximum turnover and 25 crore fund-based limit. So, whereas the new revised MSME classification limit is maximum turnover of 250 crore. So, at least as presently there is a cap of rupees 5 crore maximum funding that must be extended to all MSME who are having turnover of rupees 250 crore. This shall help all MSME with new definitions. So, we can take up with this government. Thank you.
No, I think there's a very Rajnish, you want to go?
No.
Okay. I think that's a very valid point which you raised.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the government would have considered the limit of 3 lakh crores. But logically, it may there is an argument in favor of aligning it with the definition of MSME, the new definition of MSME, which comes in from July 1. And Chandrajit, we should think about taking this up with the government as CII, that if a facility is being made available to the MSME sector, is there a way of aligning it closer to the new limits and definitions? And also this restriction of 25 crores total exposure from the banking system, whether that can be relaxed or not. I think it's a fair point which you have raised. And we at CII will seriously consider talking to the government once we get clarity of how much of the 3 lakh crores
That's
is
right.
actually getting used between now and end of July.
Yeah. Rajnish ji?
Yeah, I think that can be taken up with the government, but whenever these schemes are devised, the idea is also to spread the benefit. And government would not like, or anybody would not like, that there is a concentration. But I think it's a very fair point. When the scheme was divided, the 100 crore was thought to be a very sort of a liberal criteria, I would say, because even if I look at my portfolio, then 25 crore itself, I think more than 95% of our MSME portfolio is covered. There are hardly any MSMEs which would be having facility above 25 crore. But this is a fair point and it can be taken up. And I'm sure that if government has already committed a certain amount and budgetary provision for giving money to the trust, so it can be covered. That is the point which CII can take.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anandji. There's one question which is coming up from one of our members, Nalinji Kohli. He has mentioned that there are certain very important sectors like the healthcare sector, the IT services, defense, where MSME can grow rapidly in the post-COVID economy. So that this growth opportunity will need quick working capital support. And will the banks be active partners in this particular growth opportunity?
Definitely. And what happens that, as I was mentioning, even my opening remarks, that MSMEs are a very important part of the supply chains. And today, from banks' perspective also, when we lend, it helps that if they are part of an established supply chain. So say, for example, in defense, and if there are orders from the government, it will be very easy for the banks to support that kind of activity because we know that the money is receivable from the government. So that is very helpful. I think all the opening up of the sectors, it can give a boost to MSME sector, and India has very good engineering skills. There is no doubt about it. And the defense sector particularly, if there is a fresh investment, we as a bank would be more than happy to support that investment because one, anyone who is trying to supply to defense, it is established that they have good skills. They're not going to get approval so easily. So that itself ensures that you are lending to someone where the quality is not an issue. And then because the supply is entirely to the government, so receivables, they may come late, but they will come. So that is itself a comfort to the lenders. And healthcare, in any case, banks have supported the sector in the past also. And I don't see any reason that why banks would not be looking at these new opportunities.
Sure. Thank you, Uday.
Rajit, I just wanted to add one point to this for this very important question, that particularly for IT and healthcare sectors, which may see fast growth in the post-COVID era. One is, as high growth comes because of the opportunity, there is need for financing. And my advice is that don't depend only on bank financing as the only source of capital. Think about raising private equity, raising some risk capital, and have a mix of your plan so that your high growth objectives are taken care of. Because very often what happens is when you're in that high growth phase, if you leverage a little too much, should things slow down somewhere down the road, you get into a spot. Therefore, you need to simultaneously, along with high growth, have a good risk management thinking between how much debt versus how much risk capital or equity you need to take.
Right. Absolutely. Great clarification. Thank you very much. I'll now again move to another women entrepreneur. And I always admire women in especially the MSME segment. And this is from Madhya Pradesh. Archana, would you go ahead? Archana Bhatnagar. Just unmute yourself, Archana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I be heard?
Yes, you can be.
Okay. See, my question over here to Uday and Rajneesh both are that while government has come up with a lot of schemes and a lot of things, we have been eligible for this 20% increase also what they're giving us. But at the same time, see, I lead a lot of women entrepreneurs also, where there are so many issues at micro level which we can't even talk about, where people are not being, banks are not being supportive, very honestly speaking. But now coming to my own unit, we are now 40 years into this industry, my health and hygiene industry, and we are manufacturing hand sanitizers and disinfecting products. Now, at this period, we are going into an expansion phase. And in the expansion phase, the banks come back to us. SIDBI has given us some small loan. SIDBI won't finance any shed, any industrial shed or construction. Because so if we get money for machinery and we cannot put up a shed, where are we supposed to be putting this up? That is point number one. Point number two, when the bankers have come, we banked with SBI for long, now ICICI, whoever, they come and what they're saying is that our existing, quite a huge factory has been downgraded by 20% due to COVID times. In the times of COVID, they say your property has gone down by 20% and blah, blah, blah. These are the parameters we will feed in. And therefore, the risk is not being covered. Now, at this stage, if the banks want to cover 200% of risk for financing SME, and an SME which is showing exemplary growth, exporting and into the products for today's needs. So where do people like us go?
No, very, I would say very valid question. And whenever you do any expansion, I'm not talking about that 20% collateral has come down or anything like that. But if you're making a fresh investment of say 1 crore rupees, so it is expected, and Uday also made this point, that some equity has to come in. And that would be for an MSME 15 to 20% at least equity should be there.
That is covered. That is coming in fully.
If that is coming fully, there should not be an issue in my view. And if SIDBI has given loan for machinery, they would have given under some scheme, but banks can give loan for the by way of a term loan, and which is payable over 5 to 7 years. And maybe if you're facing any difficulty at the branch level, now you can write directly to me, or one more initiative I would like to tell that MSME ministry, they have a portal called Champions, and it has become, I think, very popular.
Yes,
and we are daily, I am myself receiving at least 2, 3, 4 references, and personally I am going through all of them. So I think that itself is a very great initiative of the ministry. And please do write to me if it is.
Thank you so much. While we are at it, just one point, last Chandrajit, the definition of MSMEs has been revised. But over here, since you know I'm president for the Association of Women Entrepreneurs, just that the women entrepreneurs marketing support that was to come in the ministry has announced the 4% procurement from women-owned enterprises. Again, in this, there is no definition of women-owned enterprises or how it can be taken forward. I think it is the need for the hour since we discussed the new definition of MSMEs, or where do women entrepreneurs stand in this? That would be one of them.
Thanks. I'll try and bring in another couple of questions because we are nearing the end of the time. I'll like to go to now again to the north part of the country and go to Lucknow and ask Kiran Chopra from Lucknow, representing his company as a managing director on rubber products. Kiran, are you just unmute yourself, Kiran?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, thanks, Speedy. Great to be in front of 3 people whom I'm a big fan of, including CB, Rajneeshji, and Udayji. I'm from Lucknow, as CB mentioned. We bank with State Bank of India for several years now. And I must say that we've had a very satisfying relationship as a gold card account with State Bank. I also must compliment State Bank for being very quick to react to the stimulus by the Honorable Finance Minister. And we got a very proactive response from the Lucknow branch in reaching out to clients like us with the same. As an MSME, I would say we are very Atmanirbhar in the true sense. As we manufacture and export automotive components, we import nothing and export even to the likes of China. So I think we really fit into that definition of Atmanirbhar. We opted for, of course, the bank's liberalized working capital assessment or the LWCA scheme, pre-approved loan facility guaranteed emergency credit line or the GCL scheme. And we did not, however, feel the need to opt for the moratorium or the interest deferment option. So we are good in terms of the way we availed of the benefits that were provided. Now, since being Atmanirbhar will be crucial going forward, I have a suggestion for the banks, especially SBI in particular, who would perhaps, I assume, have the largest number of MSME accounts. Now, it is a pity, and I have been advocating this, that there is no authentic database for MSMEs in India today. And since SBI would have the maximum number of accounts, I can cite an example for, and one of the SBI account holders imported something and later found out that the same was being manufactured by another company not very far away, also an SBI account. So if SBI put a small team of IT guys to filter data of MSME accounts and collate the same on the basis of their product category or website or contact details, etc., this will not only give the SBI accounts the confidence to buy from existing SBI businesses, but also work like a self-marketing tool for a lot of them. This is just a suggestion. I feel a lot of SMEs could benefit if this kind of database was made available, and that would apply to across banks.
So thank you, Ms. Chova, for the compliment as well as the suggestion. And let me tell you that it is a work in progress. We have already conceptualized that how it should be done. And the development work on this platform is going to commence soon. And this was one of the things where MSME Minister, Honorable Mr. Nitin Gadkari ji, he once mentioned also about Bharat Craft, where SBI would develop this platform. So we are very much dwelling on this subject. It requires a lot of elements to be put together, but it is on our radar, and we are going to do it.
Uday, any comment from you on this? Though it was directed more towards but as a more generic point that what Kiran was raising.
No, I broadly agree with what Rajneesh said, and I think it is great to know that entrepreneurs across India are focused on building an Atmanirbhar Bharat. For me, that is a ring of confidence in the future of India, being stronger on the export side and being able to be competitive is a big plus. And I think enterprises of this nature need a whole hog support from everyone in India from a medium-term India strategy point of view as well. So keep up the Atmanirbharta and more strength for Indian companies to demonstrate while being competitive and globally engaged.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think that was a very good closing comment also from Uday. But I'll also turn to Mr. Rajneesh Kumar for his closing comments. But I'd like to ask if you notice in this session, when I was just looking at it, I was trying to scroll through. We have had people asking questions from the east. We have from the north, from the west, from the south. I didn't have a question coming up from the eastern part of the country. And we have the largest public sector bank, the largest bank present here, and the finest, if I can say, bank present, private sector bank present here. the Atmanirbharata of Bharat and the sustainability of the economy of Bharat, etc., would take place only if we have this if this we have a more sustained development across the country. And when we talk about vulnerability of the MSMEs, the vulnerability of the MSMEs I find in the East are much more pronounced. But as you close with your comments, I would like to hear a little bit from both of you on this aspect also, besides your other closing comments that you may have, Mr. Rajneesh Kumar.
No, you mentioned about the East, but the fact of the matter is that the level of industrialization is not uniform across the country. And the level of industrialization or industrial activity in the eastern part is not as developed as what you find either say in NCR region, which is a very vibrant industrial base, or in Tamil Nadu, or in Gujarat, or in Maharashtra. These are the ground realities, and we can't ignore this, and there are various reasons for that. And about like the MSMEs, I can only say on behalf of the State Bank of India that constantly we are trying to see that the system becomes responsive, and usually that is the major complaint area, that the system is not as responsive. I'm talking about the State Bank of India. And that may be the situation with many other banks also. And the action by the bank is also on the multiple fronts. When I said that I firmly believe that the digital capabilities which bank has created, that will help a lot. And I just now got a message from my team that within this year, e-mudra loans we have lent to 200 crore rupees to about 47,000 people. It is end-to-end digitization without any manual interventions. So this is for the smaller loans. Of course, the loan size becomes bigger, then the manual or the subjective judgments come in. And we have taken a lot of steps to improve the organizational structure also. And very recently, because a lot of MSMEs are there, so I want to use this platform to give this message that across the country, now we have 90 deputy general managers to whom we have told your primary business focus is and should be on the MSMEs. What I found over a period of time in my bank, and I have to admit it, that housing loan became the most popular product because it is very safe to lend and relatively easy to pay. So I'm shifting that focus now. And all these 90 AGMs, we have a very senior level AGM SME to support him. And they will be the, what I would say, first contact point for any MSME if they have any difficulty. So a lot of improvement around processes also we are doing, but I know intuitively that it is not an easy task for the bank. And as I said that this hesitation, it comes from the past experience. So what needs to be done is that the methods of lending have to improve, the quality of lending has to improve, and if that is done, and if there is a confidence, is a certain percentage of NPAs are given in any lending business. When it goes beyond that, then it becomes a cause of hesitance. And then what happens in the process, the people are unable to distinguish what is a good credit and what is not a good credit. So we are taking steps. I'm hopeful that we would be able to support this important sector. And State Bank of India, it was the pioneer in MSME financing. Let me share this fact with you that the State Bank of India, way back in 1965, established a special vertical for handling MSME loans. At that time, it was not in fashion or not in vogue. State Bank of India, because it has roots in Imperial Bank of India, so we were a traders bank, and MSME, and then later on agricultural financing. So all those SBI has been pioneer, And in the end, I can say I started my career in the bank as field officer SSI in Naini, which used to be a big SSI hub at that time. So emotionally, I'm attached to this segment.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for those very insightful comments. And thanks for also letting us know your thoughts of how you will take forward. Uday, your closing comments.
I think I first wanted to thank all the members of CII MSME segment and say that as CII, I'm wearing my hat of CII to give this answer. As CII, we would like to be as engaged and as supportive of the MSME sector and take steps to ensure that there is good health and a good future for the MSME sector. There are a whole host of things which I think CII can and should be working to improve the state of the MSME sector. Of course, different segments of the sector have huge challenges, but this is the time for us to increase our engagement with the MSME sector. And I'm fully supportive of this. And I must actually thank Rajneesh for his phenomenal and scintillating perception and perspective on the MSME sector, and also his roots, which are with the SSI sector. Therefore, may your roots always stay with you, Rajneesh, and let us say, let the force be with Indian MSME sector. Thank you very much.
That was brilliant, and I must say, for the MSME membership of today, the MSME International Day has turned out to be really very important, because the largest bank of India has spent so much of time with a membership of CII, which is extremely motivating. And we also had the president of CII within 1 month of taking over, with less than 1 month of taking over, spending time with the MSME, especially for the on this very special day for the MSME. So that was very good, and thank you very much, both you gentlemen, for your observations, for your response, and for your vision, which is extremely important from the MSME perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'd immediately move on to the next session, and I would like to invite Mr. Shrikant Somani, Chairman, CII National Council on MSME, to start the next session. We have a good line of speakers for this session, and without wasting too much of time, I hand over the session to Mr. Somani. Sir, you'll have to unmute yourself, sir.
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rajesh Kumar, Mr. Uday Kotak, and CB, for a very informative session. It was indeed reassuring that the banks, through this economic relief package, are working diligently to make the MSMEs financially capable in sailing through these tough times. May I now, on behalf of CII and my personal behalf, welcome all the participants of this session on the discussion with the finance institution on the special occasion of the International MSME Day as declared by United Nations. This day recognizes the indispensability of MSMEs world over in achieving sustainable development, and emphasizes on the importance of enhancing across the finance or MSMEs across all sectors for the implementation of sustainable development goals. In the prevalent situation, when sustenance of the MSME is the most critical issue, UN has decided the theme for 2020 as COVID-19, the Great Lockdown and its impact on small businesses. And in order to continue the focus on MSMEs, to continue playing the crucial role in creating decent jobs and improving livelihoods, it becomes all the more imperative on creating an enabling business environment, including support for access to finance, information, and markets. The announcement made by the Government of India are very much in line with the UN's theme for the year and India's overall vision of making India self-reliant. For the MSME sector, especially, the 6-point agenda clearly shows the government's pattern and intent of boosting the supply side availability of capital on easy terms, and therefore empower the constituencies ranging from a farmer to a micro to a small medium business. CII welcomes the latest announcements by the government, which is additional push to the MSMEs to the launch of the credit guarantee scheme to provide 20,000 crores guarantee cover to 2 lakh MSMEs and a sub-debt facility to promoters of operational MSMEs that have become distressed or NPAs as on 30th April 2020. This scheme would cater to stressed MSMEs' challenge of getting capital in the form of debt or equity. However, the important point to ponder upon is how well can these announcements be leveraged at the ground level through proper and effective implementation, and who all can contribute to the successful outcome of the overall abhiyan of the government to become Atmanirbhar. This forms the basis of today's discussion. Before I begin, I would like to introduce all our distinguished speakers in the session. It's my privilege to introduce our chief guest, Mr. Devendra Kumar Singh, Additional Secretary and Development Commissioner, Ministry of MSMEs, Government of India. He comes with a vast experience of handling important state assignments. His contributions to the field of agriculture with formulation of policy on FPO, the agriculture export, have been instrumental. He has held important portfolios in the Ministry of Home Affairs from 1999 to 2004, Ministry of Donor DONER. He has served as Additional Director General, Foreign Trade and Director General of Foreign Trade in 2012, 11 and 16 to 16. His stint as the Chairman of APEDA from July 17 to July 18 involved focused preparation of agricultural export policies, measures to open exports from Northeast region, and creation of export infrastructure. Welcome, Mr. Singh. My other speakers on the panel are Mr. Abhimanyu Banjal, who is the Joint Managing Director and CEO of Hero Fincorp, and has been associated with CII as the Deputy Chairman, CII Northern Region, Co-Chair, CII National Forum of NBFCs. We have Mr. Ashok Sehgal, we've heard a little while ago. He's the MD of the Frontier Technology Private Limited and is a senior member of CII with the contribution in the MSME space. He is also the co-chair of the CII's National MSME Council. Ms. Kamna Raj Agarwala, a director GDPA Fasteners, and has been associated with CII through involvement with the Indian Women Network and Punjab State Council. Mr. Jyoti Prakash Gadia, MD, Resurgent India, has been associated with CII as a co-convener, MSME Northern Region. He also demonstrated history of working in financial services industry with skill in risk management, corporate finance, banking, project finance, and investment banking. Mr. Jinand Shah, as he is the MD and CEO of online PSB loan portal. He has been actively looking into automation and digitization of banking sector and financial industry. Mr. Ajay Thakur is the head of SME and Startup BSc. He is a professional with over 25 years of experience in capital markets, spanning India's biggest custodian to India's biggest and the largest stock exchange. And last of all, not the least, Mr. Dhaval Radia, co-founder of rupees.com, is a skilled professional with varied exposure to credit risk underwriting, sales and business development in the SME and business banking. Welcome to you all. Without wasting any time, I would like to request Mr. Munjal to kindly set the context for the session from NBFC's perspective. Mr. Munjal, please come in.
Thank you, Mr. Samani, and a very warm welcome to everyone on this special CII session on International MSME Day. Hope all of you and your families are safe and sound. Today's session on India's MSME is a very, very important one, and I can't emphasize enough how on the importance of MSME in Indians' economic and social fabric. The session before this, where we had the chair of the largest Bank of India and Mr. Uday Kotak himself, really tells us, speaks volumes of this industry and how important this is for India and for CII. This sector employs about 40% of India's workforce and contributes 45% of exports and over 30% of manufacturing value added. They are integral to the national supply chain, and their health directly affects supply of numerous goods and services. An economic recovery is simply not possible without a vibrant MSME sector. 2020 is the year of many firsts. Many unforeseen events have unfolded. COVID-19 has taken over all aspects of human life across the globe. Almost all economic activity had come to a grinding halt. Each one of us were supposed to stay home. We were physically distant, but socially and digitally connected. The power of technology has made geography history. Like today, we are seeing about 400 people all across the country with this technology platform. And I can certainly say that the past few weeks have been a great learning experience for everybody in industry. 2020 is the year of survival. And like Jack Ma said, if you survive, then you're already in profit. Once there's certainty on survival, we can shift our focus towards sustenance and profitability. In the midst of this pandemic, there has been an economic stimulus and RBI intervention to re-energize the economy and to re-energize the MSME sector. The Atmanirbhar package has been very well focused towards MSMEs. This package is a fresh lease of life. It provides the much liquidity and stability to the whole economy. There is a credit guarantee scheme of 3 lakh crores, which is provided for MSMEs through NBFCs, banks, and other lending institutions. There is a subordinate debt of 20,000 crores, which also is a game changer. The government has also redefined the definition of MSMEs so that businesses up to 250 crores of turnover can get benefits of most schemes that are provided for MSMEs. There has been a moratorium which has been provided till September. Although it's expensive, it is not a waiver of interest, but it gives relief to businesses, enterprise, and MSMEs for their repayment while you can start up for sustainability. There is a fund of funds scheme which aims to pump in about 50,000 crores of equity into MSME, and it is slated that about 2.5 to 3 million MSMEs pan-India will be beneficiaries of this scheme. Initial setup corpus is 10,000 crores. The SME scheme enables MSMEs with viability, growth during time of lack, both of equity and revenue. And as the previous session, Mr. Kotak and Mr. Kumar both mentioned that 15 to 20% of your funds needs should be in equity. This scheme can actually come as risk capital and not only in terms of debt. Banks and NBFCs have been facing their own challenges and issues in the past, and hence they were wary to lend due to stressful and unknown market conditions. But Atmanirbhar Bharat, Atmanirbhar package makes it easier for NBFCs and banks to lend. And we all are aware that in the last, since this scheme has come out, 79,000 crores of ECLGS, the credit guarantee scheme, has been sanctioned, and about 35,000 crores has been dispersed. The Atmanirbhar scheme also has given injection to NBFCs. They have given support, liquidity support, where they have given a partial guarantee of up to 35,000 crores, which will help NBFCs to raise money from banks and then further lend to the MSME sector. The top lenders under the scheme that I mentioned earlier on the credit guarantee scheme are SBI, HDFC, Bank of Baroda, PNB, and Canara Bank. They have already helped 19 lakh MSMEs for their business to restart. Under RBI's special liquidity facility, which was announced between March and April 2020, SBI sanctioned 10,220 crores to NBFCs, microfinance companies, and housing finance companies. Most of this money also went into the MSME sector. Under the Atmanirbhar package, 10,000 crores additional was sanctioned towards National Housing Board. This was also been pumped in to housing finance companies for further disbursements to real estate, construction, and housing loans. There has been a refinance of SIDBI. 30,000 crores of sanction has happened from this Atmanirbhar package to SIDBI, which has also seen a lot of liquidity in the market. In fact, in the previous session, one of the two questions asked, one of the audience mentioned that they got a loan from SIDBI. So we are seeing that movement come in. So in all, the Atmanirbhar package and the interventions done by RBI are, I think, are a good golden nugget to boost the economy, to create enough liquidity, yet give MSMEs credit and time to actually start up their business to come to sustainable levels. A lot of this package translation, the NBFCs and banks will have to play a very important role. We heard in the previous session as well that the PSU banks were much faster to it, and now we are seeing private sector banks and NBFCs do a very aggressive loan sanctioning under these schemes. it is imperative that as a MSME sector, we focus on governance. It is imperative that we focus on corporate governance. And if we do, then I can assure you that most of these schemes will come to you very easily from the financial services sector. I think one topic which I know has been spoken a lot, not today, but in the past, is on the corporate governance. But to avail most of this, when a crisis like this happens, there is a lot of flight to quality. So a lot of lenders start moving towards highly governed entities. So it's very important that we as an industry become more responsible and start following corporate governance to the hilt so that we can actually avail most of these sectors. To end, I would like to just end with a conclusion that the future looks very promising. We've had a good monsoon. We've had a good crop. We are seeing economic activity which is building up. We are seeing rural consumption coming back up. I can tell you that in my NBFC at Hero FinCorp, in this month we will be back to pre-COVID levels in terms of disbursements, and I hear this from other NBFCs and banks as well. And if I look at consumption in rural, I can see two-wheelers in the rural market are already back to pre-COVID levels in the month of June. We are seeing a lot of online shopping boost. We are seeing a lot of shift to healthcare products, which are actually booming. So I think to conclude, there are happier times ahead. And like I said, 2020 is a year of survival. If you survive, then you are in profit. And once there is survival certainty, we will shift the focus to sustainability and profitability. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Munjal, for your perspective on the NBFCs for fostering MSME growth. May I now request our Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Singh. Welcome, Mr. Singh, Additional Secretary and Development Commissioner, Ministry of MSME, to kindly share the government's perspective on making MSMEs self-reliant and his vision for the MSMEs as the major contributor to the nation. Mr. Singh.
Good afternoon, Mr. Shrikant Somani and Mr. Munjal, the other distinguished panelists. I'm really very happy to interact with such a distinguished panel. And today, being the International MSME Day, it has a significance. And since morning, I'm participating in some similar events. And I find that in spite of so many problems, there is optimism in most of the participants, which is very good. It is a very positive sign. There is no denying fact that COVID has brought out unexpected challenges and uncertainties. Business by nature has a risk element, but this period has brought higher risks and disruption in the supply chain, which has really caused higher level of stress. Now the government started and with the focus on the supply side, and Mr. Munjal very nicely he has given all the parameters, all the scheme details in a very lucid way, which he has covered each and every point. Now, he also mentioned that this year is going to be a year of survival. That is true. We entirely agree. This year, or what will be the length of this period of survival is very difficult to say at this moment. But yes, we can visualize that there will be a period of survival, and then there will be a period of revival. And thereafter, one can think how to thrive in the business, or in the enterprise one is selecting. So, in the period of survival, it is very essential the manner of implementation of the government schemes and to reach each and every MSME who is in need. So, that connect with the MSME is very essential, and we must focus on this issue. I was listening to the chairman, State Bank of India, also in the previous, session, where he said that they have identified senior level officials look after MSMEs. Such a focus is required in a large numbers, because these people are scattered, small. Most of them has no access to institutional finance. In fact, the survey which has come from the I just like to quote this, because the government this latest seventh economic census, it gives a very very small number which is able to assess the finance. About 77% MSMEs are taking on self-financing mode, from their own money, and then they are going to their relatives, friends to take the credit. The contribution from the financial institutions is very low, and it comes as low as 0.78%. Cooperative banks and societies, it's 1.15%. Loan from central and state government lending institutions is also very insignificant. Loan from self-help groups, microfinance institution is less than 1%. This gives a very picture which indicates that there is a need to work on the needs of the MSME, to understand why they are not able to connect with the financial institutions, and how to bridge this gap, because it is very essential if they really want to survive. If the period of survival becomes longer, then it will be much difficult. It will be much difficult. The stress level will be higher, and it will be very difficult for them to enter into the second phase, which is the revival phase. Therefore, the manner of its implementation, the manner of reaching to these people is very critical, and because we are getting many emails every day, we are getting many emails that these are the issues, and they are pointing out. Government, on our part, we have set up our control rooms in all the states, champion control rooms. We have MSME development institutes in all the states. Then we have tool rooms, in many major locations. They are acting as our control rooms. They are trying to help and handhold the MSMEs. And during this period of crisis, they are trying to connect them digitally, like today we are doing the series of webinars. They have posted so many project reports on their websites relating to COVID products. But we also realized in this period that they had this particular segment of the economy has very high strength also. In such a short period, they were able to change, some of the business lines. They have started production of PPE kits. Now we are almost self-sufficient. We are on the verge of starting exports of PPE kits. There are so many products, health-related products are now they have registered themselves on the GEM platform, and many of them have got orders on the GEM platform, this government e-marketplace. So even during crisis, these systems have been working, and there was a lot of connect on these electronic platforms. Now government has come with a new definition. We hope that this definition will help in the revival process, because the threshold limit of the investment and the turnover has been increased. Even micro, enterprise up to 1 crore of investment and 5 crore of turnover is a number which can help in business planning and to do something, to think big, and to have a sound business plan. Second is that we are going to start a online registration system from 1st of July, Udyam registration. This registration process will be completely paperless. We are asking them not to upload any document. Not a single document is required. It is just a one-page form which they have to fill online, which is based on Aadhaar authentication system. It is based on PAN authentication system. And the system will, I hope that, it will work in a truly seamless manner. So this will also help in creating a very realistic database. We have now a database, earlier Udyog Memorandum, which has about 1 crore registration. With this new definition, we feel that there will be more numbers which will come in the net, and this process will quickly, we hope that in the next 6 to 7 months, this process will be stabilized and we'll have a very sound system. And this database will help them to connect with the different financial institutions for all their activity. We'd also like to focus on the, the productivity part. And we have schemes like, lean manufacturing, zero effect, zero defect, Z scheme. And we would like to implement such schemes in clusters so as to get maximum benefit. You are aware that we have a capital subsidy scheme, to attract investment in the capital. And we would like to focus for such activity also in a cluster manner, so that there is a desired expected outcome, and it will be visible outcome. Now, one of the things which we would like, and we are requesting all our government, there are similar supply side schemes have come from the Ministry of Rural Development for street vendors. Similar schemes have come from the Food Processing Ministry for the food processing sectors. So all the government is working in tandem, and to have a synergy among all different schemes to have the desired result. Now, we also feel that many such MSMEs will come into the quality issues. They will address their quality issues to become more competitive. And because if you want to really become a Atmanirbhar Bharat, then you have to address those qualities issues. You have to follow the standards. You have to follow the BIS standards. You have to get accredited with different quality agencies, NABL, etc. And also, one must think in the different processes so as to adopt those standard processes to increase the efficiencies and to reduce the cost. It will help in reducing the cost. So these are the areas which we would like to focus, and we will be focusing. And we also would like to assure, through your platform, that government is trying to handhold. We are aware that situation is grim and requires handholding, requires support, and all the agencies are very, proactively involved and, in a positive mode. Actually, I would rather say it is a positive mode for each stakeholder. With these words, I would like to conclude and convey my thanks to you and your organizers for providing me this opportunity to interact with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Indeed, encouraging to learn that all the different sections of government are now working in synchronicity towards the cause of MSMEs who have suffered. And I'm sure that we all understand that if we have to put into priority today with the 3 months of lockdown, I think almost about 30%, if I may say, MSMEs are in dire straits. And I think the first thing to do is to sustain, to make them sustain, and then, of course, revive. And as we come to the end of this session, we now come to the session of the panel discussion. And I would certainly like this to be a free-flowing discussion. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I request you to kindly put your comments and views on using the chat box. And to all the participants who have joined in, please note that you can share your questions on the Q&A box, directing to any of the panelists or host, and we will try and take these questions if time permits. I would like to turn my first question to Mr. Gadia. Let me ask you, sir, should the economic package adopt a more sector-specific approach to address the crisis than a blanket approach? What's your take from the bankers' financial institutions' perspective, Mr. Gadia?
Thank you so much, sir. It's always an honor to share a dais with you, Srikanth, sir. You're always a mentor guide at all points of time. And thank you for all the speaker availability, and thanks everybody for part of me. Say Ashokji, I can see all the familiar faces. Two things, Srikanth, sir, just wanted to mention whatever is the Atmanirbhar package. I will just respond to your question, but there are two important points in this Atmanirbhar package, Bharat. We have been speaking only about the 3 lakh crore of the scheme of the MSME funding. There are two other things which this government has done good. First is the no global companies are invited to bid up to the contract of 250 crores. So this is absolutely a very, very welcome step and I think on behalf of CII and others, there are a lot of state governments and there are a lot of PSUs which need to be sanitized for this information. So that's, I suppose, we need to spread this message to the state government, and it also need to be percolated at large so that this effectiveness of this 250 crore of contract need to be done at the ground level. Whatever is the intention of the government, that needs to be properly implemented at the right earnestness. The second important thing what the government has done is the partial release of the bank guarantee upon the partial completion of the project. Earlier, what used to happen that my bank guarantee used to lock till the 100% of my project is getting completed. Now, if I've completed 60% of my project, so my 60% bank guarantee get released. So these are the two important aspects also apart from this 20% scheme which is been taken care. Only this 20% scheme, Srikanth, if we can just do only one thing there. This 20% scheme is valid on whatever is the outstanding balance on the 29th February. So this, I suppose, what we can request all the banker friend here that, sir, whatever is the real working capital cycle of the company, bankers should assess that. And out of that, whatever is the limit that is coming under this guarantee scheme, they can sanction it at a lower rate of interest. And whatever is the balance amount coming, that they can charge as per the risk premium depending upon the borrower's profile. So that ultimately liquidity issue, it should not turn down to a solvency issue after 6 months of time. That liquidity issue should remain and it should be resolved at a proper scale, this liquidity issue. Regarding the question that you have been asking that about the sector specific proposal, I suppose once it is 100 crore turnover cap which has been mentioned, and it has been mentioned that we would, on behalf of CII, will try and see that in case if this turnover cap that can be done with it. I think this sectoral cap, this issue can come up at the time of restructuring of the loan when the RBI comes up with the guideline at the time of restructuring of the loan. That time, in case if the government comes up, that time we need to see that sector specific restructuring guideline. There are some sectors which would require some deep restructuring. There would be some sector which would require only a medium term restructuring. So at the present moment, this 100 crore turnover where there is no sector specific guideline has been mentioned, let it go like that for the time being. And I just want to congratulate all the banker friend here and just wanted to apprise that near about 90% of the MSME cases, all the PSU banks, they have been able to give this sanction letter to all the MSMEs concerned there. And out of that, around 20 to 25% of disbursement has also taken place. But a lot of MSME, what they have done, that they have taken the loan at a lower cost of interest and they have replaced it by the higher cost of fund. May not have gone for the adequate productive use, but it has gone for replacing from the higher cost of fund to the lower cost of fund. But let that be for the time being at the moment. Just another request, Srikant sir, if that can be done, because Abhimanyu-ji is here, just for an NBFC who are lending to the MSME under the credit guarantee scheme, in case if the bank can come out with a special lending mechanism to lend to NBFCs who are onward lending to MSME, which are covered under credit guarantee scheme. So there has to be a different lending parameter for the banks for NBFCs which are lending to the MSME under this guarantee scheme, because those loans are also in turn covered by the banks, vis-a-vis some other portfolio purchasing also, which they are doing it at the moment. So these are some of the things which I wanted to mention, Srikant sir. Sir, you have to unmute, Srikant sir.
Thank you very much. I think you brought the perspective of the loan very well. In fact, I also feel that 20% loan which has been taken at an interest level. So the question of repayment also will come into account, because if we do it on a 6-month basis, we will have another problem after 6 months. And therefore, we do not want to do this. As a principle, I would feel that we need to handhold NPAs, which could become possible NPAs. And I think we certainly do not want that at hand. So we need to look at this issue very carefully in trying to sustain and sustain the MSMEs. Thank you very much for giving us your perspective. My next question I would like to pose to Mr. Shah. How can Fintech and bank industry work together for speedy dispersal of loans to the MSMEs? Mr. Shah, you have your point of view.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Hope you are able to hear me. Yes. So it's a nice question, and possibly I have been in the center of this entire question that has been raised. So one of the key points which SBI chairman just spoke about is that there's no more dearth of credit where credit can be taken, can be given to MSMEs, right? The only point that he made was that in 2018, this platform of 59 minutes was launched by the Prime Minister for the MSMEs. And SBI has already instructed for the MSMEs to get the loan through this platform. So that process is already there for all the PSBs, and few private players are already there on the platform. So far as the fintech and bank collaboration is concerned, this is a perfect example of a fintech and bank collaboration that has happened, where this platform acts as the fintech and bank acts as the providers of loan. So in that case, you can consider that an MSME that was earlier getting a loan in 60 to 90 days, today has started to get a loan in less than 10 days. Now, still the question remains, do all the MSMEs get the loan, right? So normally when fintech comes into question, lending and payment is very different. So when we talk about payment segment in fintech, it is very easy because a transaction is done where payment goes from one person to another person and transaction is over. But lending is somewhere a loan is given which has to be recovered back, right? It cannot be like a grant. The loan is given by a bank, it has to be paid back by the borrower. So only those borrowers that fit in the risk criteria of the bank would be given the loan. So that is where fintech and bank collaboration work. That fintechs have developed platforms, fintechs have developed those models, and fintechs have enabled the banks to in fact improvise those models and to increase the efficiency of lending. So far as the adoption by the bankers is concerned, so a very valid point that always used to come up to us is that banks are still disbursing in 60 to 90 days. Okay, banks are not disbursing in 7 to 10 days, which was promised when it was launched. So it took 3 to 6 months actually for the banks to understand that the delivery by a fintech platform is equivalent to a delivery that is done in a way they do manual assessment. So they actually parallelly processed an application that comes through a fintech and an application that is done manually at a bank's own branch. And then they came to know after 6 months that the processing is even more efficient when a fintech platform is utilized. So you can consider that over last 1 year, the turnaround time of disbursements has reduced. Now again, the next question comes that what about ECLGS? And it has been very, very effective. So all the public sector banks, or even Mr. Gadia also told that so many MSMEs have been approached, and it is a guarantee scheme which has been talked about. Even Shri Uday Kotak also told 3 to 4 weeks down the line, you will see the private sector and NBFCs also in line with the PSBs. So everyone is going for giving that additional 20%, which is a guaranteed fund of government, saying that if there is any NPA, government would be backing it. So there is no further risk appetite so far as the banks are concerned, and therefore the lending is happening. This is a big thing for the MSMEs that is there. The question still remains is, are all the MSMEs covered? Would everyone be covered under this? Then the question that was asked is 100 crore, 250 crore, those all have been resolved. But the other question that comes is, say I did not have a limit on 29th February, or I have never taken a loan, and I require finance right now. So you have tools like what SBI chairman told, you have tools, say like a 59-minute loan or a bank's own process, NBFC's own digital process. Those tools are there where you are getting loans fast. The next question that comes is, can we get it in currently in the COVID scenario? Say I applied in April, would I get in 7 days or would I get in 10 days? Now, considering that the ECLGS is the current priority at banking and branch sector, as soon as the ECL disbursement reaches its peak and it has been disbursed to most of the players, again the credit offtake will again go to its peak. So while you can hear from Mr. Munjal saying that the numbers that used to happen pre-COVID and the numbers that have started happening now are similar. So you will find the numbers of new applications and new disbursements going up parallelly in this year also. It will not be that MSMEs will not be funded. In fact, Shri Rajneesh Kumar also told that my branch people used to give more home loans than MSME loans. However, now they have dedicated cells that MSMEs are a priority, say 40% priority sector, 80% of agri, 22% is still an MSME priority. So they have a priority cell and they have the tools to deliver. The biggest point that he raised, which all of us should know, is awareness. So where is the awareness? So one is awareness among the bankers. So last 18 months, awareness among the bankers has been created. Awareness among MSMEs, how to apply and which tools to use is something has to be spread across the MSME sector. So those things are critical now going forward, that MSMEs also should be enlightened on what tools to use to get the credit. that they require. So one more point that was raised by Mr. Gadia, he said that not only the additional 20%, but you should also consider even higher limit that an MSME should be availing because he is worth of it. So those tools are also there in the market. So which tool to apply, when to apply, and how to apply is an awareness part. So the biggest point now is how to create the awareness among the MSMEs on which tools to apply and when to apply, and to what amount the tools are available, and beyond that, how the process is happening. So, so far as fintechs and banking sector is concerned, I would always say that tools have come up, lot of tools have come up. Bankers have adopted a lot. Bankers are going digital. MSMEs also should start looking into those digital tools, and fintechs are changing the way lending is happening. So I'm open to any and every question other than this, and this is all I would like to say.
Because I also find that while we are making all these possibilities for MSMEs and different avenues for MSMEs to take loan, I think one of the things that I would be very interested to know, because there are so many things which come around to say why they are not taking, who's taking, and what's happening. But if there's a database we collected, we understand who are the willing borrowers and who are the wanting borrowers. I think that makes the differentiation to take why people are not taking or why people are taking, and what is the need. But certainly, as you say, there are tools, there are possibilities, and I think the government is certainly putting its effort into trying to see how best they can work on MSMEs. While we come on to this, as far as the financing is concerned, one other thing that the government also feels, and we also understand, that the capital market is something that the MSMEs would need to venture into, and it's presently the government is pushing the MSMEs to explore the funding through the capital market in a form of equity, which is evident, of course, through the announcement of the 50,000 crore equity infusion fund that they've created. My question to Mr. Thakur, I'd like to know, Mr. Thakur, what do you think as to how would MSMEs be, and what can be done, and would MSMEs be encouraged to avail this scheme benefit to get themselves listed? How does getting listed help them through this scenario? Would like to have your thoughts, Mr. Thakur.
Thank you, Mr. Somani. It's pleasure to be here on the day of Global MSME Day, and BSE has been always the pioneer in the capital market. We are into existence formally for last 145 years and informally for last 200 years. But in last 200 years, we have seen only 4,700 companies listed onto the capital market, but they have created $1.5 trillion of capital for themselves. But I am just listening to my panelists. I have listened to the bankers. I have been in so many panels and webinars. Everyone is talking about giving loans. And most of the times when I am seeing the balance sheet of the MSMEs or even the large company, I see the balance sheet very much stressed or over leveraged. And most of the time, it gives me an impression that the promoters are working to service the loan rather than to grow the business. So I think, there is a very much, emphasis that needs to be given by all the financial experts and, all the consultants and associations like CII, FICCI, and many other, that, the MSMEs or the large corporates should start, start getting funds from equity dilution. I think that is very much important. Let me tell you, we have started this MSME platform in the year 2012. In last 7 years, I have met almost 30,000 MSMEs. I have seen all the balance sheet. I have kept on telling them to get themselves listed, but somehow they don't understand. There are a lot of fears in their mind, and some implanted myths are there in their mind that they have to do a lot of compliances. And just now, one of our panelists had talked about corporate governance. So these are the major problems that this country is facing. I think that in this capital market, we should have at least 25,000 to 50,000 companies listed. And I am quite that if 30,000 corporates will be listed onto the stock exchange, will be the largest market capitalization company in the world. Today, we are one of the 10th stock exchange as far as market capitalization in the world is concerned. But I think we can be under the top, in the top, if we can, bring more and more companies to get listed. So another problem that this country is facing is that, on the paper and everywhere we keep on listening that there are almost, 65 crore MSMEs are there. But how many of them are registered? No, hardly some of them are registered. I think maybe, 1.3 crore companies might be registered with the MSME. Now, these MSMEs can avail the loan, but what about the rest? 90% which are unregistered. I think we all have to serve them also because they are catering to various sectors of the economy. What about them? We are not hearing about whereabouts of those companies. What is the situation under this, COVID? Though there is light out of the, by the end of the, but what in between the period? This is not a normal disruption. This is a big shock. So I think we all need to understand that we have to. Now, the major question comes on to the equity market. Now, this SME platform that we have created, we have made the guidelines in such a way that almost 70% of the SME can get themselves listed onto the stock exchange. The guidelines are very simple. Any company having net tangible asset of 1.5 crores with 3 years into existence, with any 1 year of, operating profit can get listed on our SME platform. Now, till today, both the exchange together have got almost 500 companies listed. We are the largest player in the SME platform. These 500 companies have raised almost 6,600 crores from the capital market. And today, jointly, the market capitalization is 35,000 crores. Can anyone think of this? Okay, 3,500 created market capitalization of 35,000 crores in last 7 years. So that's why we want. And another thing, let me tell you, all the panelists can talk about loan. What are the benefit of loans that I think we also need to make the promoters understand. But what are the benefits of equity? Number one, you can raise fund by diluting your equity. Number two, you don't have to service the equity the way you are servicing the loan. So at least your stress is over. The third, your balance sheet gets stronger. Okay, the corporate governance comes into picture. Your profitability moves up, and when your profitability moves up, most of the NBFC and banks give you loan at reduced rate of interest. Fifth, the credibility of the promoters increases manifold because the corporate governance comes into picture. Therefore, the credibility of the promoters increases manifold. Sixth benefit, visibility. The companies are traded onto the stock exchange. Therefore, visibility also increases too much. Seventh benefit, you can retain the employees by giving them ESOPs. We have seen the IT companies between 95 to 2000, what they have done. They have been able to retain best of their employees by rewarding them ESOPs. And ESOPs have got value only when they are listed. The seventh benefit is you are a person who become as powerful as the central bank governor because you are issuing your own currency in the form of equity because it is being traded into the stock exchange. So your equity becomes a currency. And the seventh benefit is your equity becomes collateral. Maybe after 5 years, 6 years, or 7 years, if you don't want to dilute your equity, you can place your equity and get loan from the banks or NBFC. So I have never found any other instrument in the world which gives so much benefits to the promoters. And on this Global SME Day, I request and plead to all those MSMEs to look to the stock exchange which we have created for them to please start raising funds from equity. Don't get yourself bulldozed by taking huge loan. Otherwise, you will die one day. So I think you should have a balance between debt and equity. Otherwise, everyone will be saying, take equity, take loan, take loan, take loan. And finally, one day you will find yourself, servicing the loan. Even you will not eat in your house, but you keep on servicing loan. So I think loan is not bad, but extreme of anything is bad. In Sanskrit, we say, Ati Sarvatra Varjet. So Ati of loan is very bad. So we need to have a real balance sheet. We should not have an imbalance sheet by taking huge loan on our books. So that's the message I want to give through your platform. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thakur. I do understand where you're coming from. And I'm one of those believers who feel that the transition that should take place of MSMEs, especially when the small becomes a medium and a medium becomes large. And I think the second part, the latter one, is the more probable thing that it can happen. And this can also happen very easily through the equity infusion into the companies. But nevertheless, I'm coming back to the question of loans when we take, and in the assessment of credibility, we do find gaps and we do find difficulties when their assessment takes place. Let me turn myself back to Mr. Radia once again, to ask you, Mr. Radia, there's also a part, you're a part of the fintech industry. What do you think the fintech companies can offer to banks with respect to analytical tools, etc., that can help the banks in assessing the credibility of an application or help in the due diligence of the banks? There are, obviously, today we have fixed norms and there are generic norms through which they are assessing. But I think in MSME, we'll have to find different ways and different novel ways of assessing so that they can enjoy the fruits of taking loan. I'd like to ask you this question.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Somani sir. And good evening to all the MSME members on this International MSME Day. I think, right from the first session till now, I think, lot of points which are, confirming our beliefs. And sir, I would like to answer your question in two dimensions. I think there are two dimensions of it. Okay. While I understand that, SME is always looking up to the banks as far as the lending needs are concerned, but we need to understand where is the gap. And I think SMEs are equal responsible. Thank you so much. I think Ajay Thakurji in his last, few minutes back have told a commendable thing that, where the problem is. So understand that today the problem is two-faced. Even SMEs have a problem where there is a lack of awareness and understanding to what the banking system is all about, okay, or what the bankers have to offer. Of course, there is a problem where they do not have access to the banks, and fintechs are here to solve it. But some of the typical problems for MSMEs are subprime financials. Look at from the banker's perspective, look at from a lending perspective. Okay, there is a business concentration in as in one of the session, one of our esteemed member from Trichy was also saying that while they are focusing on the power sector, but this lack of business analytics never allow MSMEs to go or move beyond their regular business concentration. So that's a problem. Again, lack of awareness and willingness to analyze their own financials and banking. So these are some of the problems where SMEs have to understand that today they need to evolve. Okay, the loan is not the only solution, but there are other solutions in terms of understanding their own business and problems in much or better way. Okay, what kind of loan is to be taken? Of course, there is a problem on the lending side as well. So if some of the prominent problem I have to say which we can solve is say today most of the banks and even to an extent NBFC, I'm sure Shri Munjalji is here, there is no flexibility. And I can say, being a banker myself as well, that we as a banker, okay, in the past never had this option of flexibility. What we are is we are too much product driven banking system, that whatever it is we have product X, product Y, product Z, and now every customer has to fit into these products. Now that's not the right approach. It is like saying I have two sizes of clothes and everybody between S and XL has to come in the same type, same clothes. Okay, so that's one aspect. Again, the banking, especially PSUs, what I think is not evolved or have somehow missed moving from an MSME or retail lending, while the corporate lending, mid-corporate lending, banks have done, commendable job and since years of time, no doubt about it. But I think especially PSUs have not yet evolved when it comes to MSME underwriting or retail loans underwriting. I think it is very essential that fintech has to be two-dimensional and solve both this problem. On the one hand, provide so much of analytical tools and support, okay, in terms of to SMEs so that they understand their business in much better way. They can make their balance sheets much more stronger so that they are growth ready. Their credibility is also established. It is very essential. And I think that is the time where banker will start looking and pursuing this SME in a much, much different way. Okay, and again, as a fintech, it is not only about the processing the loan today, or not only about the way, the disbursement has to be faster, but it is way beyond that, where the data analytical tools or data analysis have to play a bigger role, which helps in predictivity analysis, which also helps in personalizing or customizing the product. Like say, for example, even in any particular sector, not all customers are same, but they have to opt for only one product. So I think both the ways, not only in terms of better underwriting, alternative underwriting, or supporting bank through data analysis, but at the same point in time, all these tools have to support MSME also, and MSMEs have to adopt these tools for their betterment and establishing their credibility in a much better way in the future to come. That's what I want to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There have been a number of questions which have come. I'll come back to those, but before that, I was while we've heard all of you, all the panelists that have come here and spoken on the economic stimulus package from the perspectives of the banks, ministry, and the financial institutions, the fact is that the proof of the pudding is in the eating it. And I think it would be the best to hear from the MSME sector themselves. And I would request my colleague, Mr. Ashok Sehgal, to share his thoughts from the MSME industry's end. Mr. Sehgal.
Thank you, Ms. Somani. Thank you very much. I think you put it very well. There is one perspective which is from the finance community. There is another perspective from the MSME community. I am happy to report that the view of the MSME community is perhaps more positive than is being perceived by the financial community. It is more positive in the immediate and short term, where the question of survival of the worst period of the present crisis, most of the MSMEs have got their arms around it and seem to have overcome the immediate thing through the many steps taken by the government and with the help of the financial institutions in providing liquidity in the short term and in a quick manner to most MSMEs who wanted it. I would just like to share very briefly that in about 2 weeks ago, there was a discussion of an industry association group with the Eastern region, where the question was asked, what are the biggest problems with restarting? Number one was workers. Number two was logistics. And then the chairperson there had to ask, what about finance? And there was silence for about 10 or 15 seconds before anybody really came up, and there were not so many serious problems. I think the current problem of survival is largely behind us. We need to now look at revival and a robust growth from here on. And this COVID crisis is the opportunity for us to re-examine and restructure ourselves and find a new way of doing business. Now, as of today, our feeling is that most of the MSMEs are finding that there is a pent-up demand which justifies reopening and starting production and supplying. They are faced with the problems of shortage of funds because payments against supplies made in January and February have not been forthcoming as they expected. However, that has been largely overcome by the short-term financial loans given for working capital. But what will happen about 2 months from now, when the present hump of backlog of supplies and orders is met? Will there be fresh demand or will there not be fresh demand? How much will it be? And I think that is something which will require a two-pronged response. One is continued government funding in its constrained financial capacity with infrastructure spending and other project spending, because the government remains the largest end user or end buyer of goods in the country. So that is something we need to address. And what that will require is perhaps a continued support for the liquidity steps which have been taken. And some people have utilized, as you pointed out, many people have not fully utilized. But that will come. The other side is that as we try and grow, and there's this focus on Atmanirbhar and entering the global supply chain, reducing imports, here is an opportunity which I feel MSMEs will take up to upscale and grow their operations, make them more efficient. And this will require a certain amount of capital expenses and infusion of capital towards capex and not towards working capital, which I think is something which has not been adequately discussed or provided for in any of the current discussion in the last month. So I would urge that this is something we should look at. Going beyond that, by and large, as I mentioned at the start, the availability of funds seems to be good. There is a problem with the cost. There is a problem with the speed of disbursement, which Mr. Uday Kotak also agreed, and we hope that that will further improve. So I think another side of this is the promise of the finance minister to release funds to PSUs to enable them to pay MSMEs in time. I think this is an aspect which requires, and I would request Mr. K. Singh from the MSME Ministry to kindly set up a mechanism for following up with the Finance Ministry to see that adequate funds and how much funds are being released to the PSUs, and are the PSUs, after getting those additional funds, in fact channelizing them to the intended beneficiaries, which are the MSMEs. Another aspect of this is that the MSMEs themselves may not be the direct suppliers to the PSUs where the funds are stuck. They are suppliers down the chain to larger companies, corporates, EPC contractors, and so on. So if the funds of the larger buyer, who is the customer of the MSME, is stuck, then he is not in a position to pay the MSMEs in time. So going beyond directly helping PSUs with liquidity to meet the direct payments MSMEs, certain amount of funding to the PSUs to enable them to pay the larger companies, with a stipulation and a provision and a monitoring that is earmarked for release to MSMEs, is another step which I would request the MSME Ministry to set up a mechanism to monitor and facilitate. So I think those are the principal points which I had to say, Somani, on what the MSMEs feel is. Gratitude to the financial community for having helped us in the survival phase. And now we look forward to the help in the revival phase also.
Method of helping out, especially when money is blocked. This is one of the questions which has been there for more than a couple of years now, and we've been following up the stuck payment of MSMEs, and liquidity being one of the most important things for the MSMEs as of now. I wonder if there's a possibility, it's just a corollary to what Mr. Sehgal said, that if the PSCs and PSUs were allowed to borrow money from the banks at a certain, or the banks had to lend money to them at a certain rate of interest, for example, whether it be 7% or 8% or whatever it is, and that money could be then paid back to the SMEs, or the banks could then do an interest subvention to MSME loans at a lower rate, so the banks don't lose and the money comes into the MSMEs. We really need to work on innovative methods of getting liquidity into the MSMEs today. Now, before I come to Ms. Agarwala, I have a question which directly relates to Mr. Thakur, which I thought I would ask at this stage, and before I move into the other section, is what are the criteria by which the MSMEs consider to decide that it is ready to go for equity dilution so that it gets a good valuation?
I think I have spoken at that point of time what are the criteria. But still, for the participants, let me once again tell them that, there are three criteria. Number one, that your company should be in existence for minimum period of 3 years. Number two, your net tangible assets should be minimum 1.5. And third, in any one of the 3 years, you should have operating profit. So if the MSMEs are meeting any of these criteria, then they can get themselves listed onto the stock exchange. It's a very simple process. One more thing here, let me add you that most of the MSMEs whom I have met, they fear because of the compliances. Okay, they feel that after listing, they have to do a lot of compliances. So for the benefit of the participants, let me tell them that we have relaxed the post-listing guidelines. So instead of quarterly compliance, here the companies have to do monthly compliances. Means they have to file half-yearly unaudited result, not audited result, but half-yearly audited result, unaudited result, and yearly they have to file the audited result. So the post-listing compliances have been simplified, and besides that, to make it cost-effective, we have also done away with, publishing it into the newspaper. So there is no need to publish the result into the newspaper. It's not compulsory. You have to just give the information to the stock exchange. A stock exchange will put it on their website, and the company has to put it on their website. So very simple. They don't have to worry for that.
And what would be the cost of listing?
It's very less, sir. Let me tell you, it's very less. Any company can afford coming for listing. That cost is not so much. And let me tell you that only 20% of the cost they have to spend before listing. The rest 80% they have to give post listing. It means that out of pocket expenses just 20%, 80% only after they get the funds into their kitty. So it's not much, sir. It's not much. It's very simple. And again, it's one-time cost. Let me tell you, it's one-time cost. It's not recurring.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. I would like to have another perspective, and this is from Ms. Agarwala, Kamna Agarwala. We would like to hear from you as well on the MSME perspective. Kamna, would you please come in?
Good evening, Mr. Somani. It's wonderful to be here and to be able to actually interact in person, because I think all of us are in a sort of state of suffering right now, suffering, undecisiveness, and, kind of fear of the future. As a woman entrepreneur, I've been in the business of selling engineering products into Europe for the past 40 years, and it's been a good run. We've been very well supported by the country, and exports, there has been no sort of holding us back. However, we've come into this COVID situation where, as an SME, we are actually struggling with business retention, we are struggling with manpower retention, and we are struggling with liquidity. And I think in the first two, business retention up to now, probably because there has been a carryover or a spillover in exports, we are largely Europe-centric. So at present, there is business, but as we all feel, what is going to be the sustenance of that business comes September, October, when this business gives over. This, where people's coffers have been emptied. So there has been a sort of a continuity. Now that there is this fear, will this continuity stay? And particularly for the MSMEs, there's this big fear which exists in everybody's mind. Manpower retention has been a big issue. The MSME has taken the brunt of it completely on its own shoulders. People have left. We've tried to keep them back. There's some people we've not been able to keep back. April and May has been 2 months of big struggle. We've got over it somehow. We were genuinely expecting the government to participate, but we didn't see anything. However, we could put that past us. We're still struggling. We are trying to keep people back. A lot of them have gone away, but that is something we've taken on our own, on the chin. Coming to liquidity, there is a huge paucity of funds, and there is a huge fear of taking money. So we are struggling with both. Now you've come up with this, and there is no doubt that the government wants to help us where liquidity is concerned. The intent is absolutely clear, and as Mr. Singh has said, they really want to know ground reality. So we really feel both. However, there is a big gap in what your intent is and what is reaching us. Now I just want to bring to the table, we understand when we talk to banks, banks have their challenges. But those challenges should not be parked in the MSME pocket. Their challenges should be resolved with you and the bigger players and the government. I don't think the MSME has the bandwidth to take over the fears and the challenges of the banks. Now, when the government wants to give money to the MSME and it is routed through the banks have to find their solutions with the government, not with the MSME. Now, I was having a chat with Mr. Somani, with the CII, and we were saying how would we give solutions? MSME is not, it's not in the MSME scope to create solutions. Now, I want to spell out the challenges that are coming to the MSME on the ground level. I think the government participation and the bank participation here would want to know. And I have been talking to banks. I am a sufferer myself, so I can genuinely tell you what's happening. Number one, banks are risk averse. The public sector banks have been very open. I must commend them. We unfortunately shifted from public sector to private sector for cost saving 2 years ago, and I don't know why now I'm regretting it seriously. Because the public sector banks have come out, they have chased companies with whom they have limits, said, come and take money from us. They have brought down the interest levels phenomenally and said, I know you need help, come and take money. And actually, all the people that I know of, all the exporters that I know of have happily taken the money. A lot of them, money has already reached their banks. In private sector banking, they are risk averse. They are evaluating our balance sheets and our cash flows before they want to give us the money. In a COVID situation, I'm sorry, but there isn't a cash flow evaluation. There isn't a stock evaluation because we haven't worked for 2 months. So our bank sheets are not real. So, I mean, how are they going to do that? How are we going to get that money? They're looking at us with a jaundiced eye. And I think the government needs here to come in and neutralize this. Public sector and private sector banks need to be on a level playing field. We in private sector banks are feeling a little bit cheated. And I think that needs to be worked out. Interest rates. Interest rates between public sector banks and private sector banks are completely different. Now, why am I not getting the best rate of interest? Where did I go wrong? I mean, that's not fair. Now, private sector banks are saying we need to cover our banks, NPAs could happen, we need to renovate. When the government has openly come up and said, we will protect the banks, we will protect you from NPAs, then why is there so much of question? Why is there so much of paperwork? So I think, Mr. Somani, this should really be taken into consideration. I don't think this is a time when you can question, when you can sort of put us in a space where, will you exist, will you not, how good are you? I think all of us are in the same space. Women, men, the MSMEs together. I think there has to be more of an appetite to take. There has to be more trust. And I think once we get through this period of 3-4 months, where we get where we get dedicated support, we want to run our companies. We don't want to go NPA, but we need your support. So that's really what I want to bring to the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamna. Thank you very much indeed for bringing. I think that was important to understand the ground level realities. I know the government is working. It's running from pillar to post to do whatever they can for MSMEs. We've talked to ministers, we've talked to other people, and I think this is the intent of the government is absolutely pure and absolutely fantastic. And I thought it would be important to understand two ground realities of MSMEs from themselves. Now we have a lot of questions which have come in, and I think we could carry on for another 2 hours if we had to, but I think we'll have to. I can only take 1 or 2 if time permitting, if it's still there. And my first, I would ask Mr. Nandakumar, who's there, the CII chair of the Western region. Mr. Nandakumar, could you please come in and make your question short, please? Mr. Nandakumar, are you there?
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, of course. Yes, please. Mr.
My question is to my question is to Mr. Singh. This new definition of MSME, I agree, which is clearly taken care of in terms of the investment as well as the turnover. My question is, what happens is not only the manufacturer, but also the service provider and traders come into the MSME spectrum. But there is one big issue which is coming is, if there is a wholly owned subsidiary of an overseas company operating in India, they also get into MSME. They will also enjoy all the benefits of MSME in terms of priority funding, in terms of public procurement policies, whereas their cost of money is practically 1% or 2% compared to an Indian MSME pays 13 or 14%. So can it be added one more? I'm not saying a clause, at least can be added one addendum to this requirement stating that an MSME ownership provided 25%, not more than 25% is by a non-MSME member. Can that be added to this MSME definition? Because otherwise the manufacturing MSMEs in India, very difficult situation to sustain, because all the requirement, all the benefits will enjoy others. So this is my question to Mr. Singh. Please look at whether the definition of the MSME, one more qualification can be given. The ownership is such a way that 25% maximum can be non-MSME members. That's my question.
Mr. Singh, would you like to answer this question now?
Yeah.
You will have to unmute yourself.
This question actually, some suggestions have come, and still we are discussing on this issue, because it has larger implications, and it's very, we have to take a call, because it is relating to investment and investment from different sources. And then the picture of investment, is very difficult to understand. Who is 25%, and there is some other suggestions as well, say an investment from abroad. So this issue, it has been flagged, and we have taken note, but we have not taken any final view. I would also like to respond to Mr. Sehgal's point about for monitoring and facilitating payment to the MSME sector. I would like to inform that this payment by the big public sector undertakings to MSME sector is being monitored, and the total procurement from by these top public sector undertakings, including railways, in a year from MSME is not very significant. Actually, if you see, it is about 40,000 crore, broadly 40,000 crore. And if it was analyzed, that how much money is pending. So after this situation developed, and government took a proactive decision that such payments have to be done on priority, most of the payments has been made in the month of April and May, and there is very little amount which is pending beyond 45 days, and the amount, it will be coming less than 400. And many of the cases, where such amount is not being cleared is due to some other issues, maybe quality issue, some refund, etc. So government is monitoring. Now the other issue, how to enhance the procurement by the government. So one of the measure we are asking the MSMEs to enroll themselves on the GEM portal, government e-marketplace, where government agencies are have been instructed to procure from that platform. The second is that certain good issue relating to tendering process, some certain clauses which is hindering the entry of MSME in participation of those tenders. So if certain issues, certain issues are coming to our notice, which we are trying to take up with the concerned agencies, concerned ministries, but a CII as a platform can utilize to go into details that what are those conditions which are really blocking the entry of MSME in participation. And then, if they approach in a institutional way to the government, will be happy to resolve that. Thank you.
Mr. Singh. We really have run out of time, but I can only allow one more question. Can I ask Mr. Rajat Mehra, co-convener MSME panel UP Place, to come in and ask his, and thereafter, Mr. Sehgal, I would like you to sum up the discussions. Thank you. Mr. Mehra.
Thank you, Mr. Somani, and good evening to everybody. I have two issues that I would like to highlight, that during the course of these two sessions, speakers after speakers have been actually talking about the virtues of disciplined borrowing. Mr. Kotak very nicely articulated that too much dependence on bank borrowing should be avoided, and some equity should also be brought in. Then Mr. Ajay Thakur also very nicely articulated excess of everything is bad, अति हर चीज की अति बुरी होती है, और लोन की भी बहुत ज्यादा अति होनी खराब साबित कर सकती है. So in this context, I would like to highlight one anomaly that has come in ECLGS scheme that was announced by the central government, under which the provision is that 20% additional credit is provided to the of the outstanding borrowing as on 29th February 2020. Now, what it has happened is inadvertently, perhaps by design, those who had full utilization of their accounts have ended up getting most rewarded, and those who were using their borrowings in a very disciplined manner and judiciously are the ones who find themselves most punished, in the sense that we have several such MSMEs actually telling that they had their sanctioned limit, for example, 10 crores, but as Mr. Jyoti little while ago referred, that because of working capital cycle, people do have, people usually issue their payment checks around between 1st and 10th of next month, and then the payments keep trickling in, and by the end of month, usually they have their accounts more or less squared out. Their bank limits are not fully utilized, and these type of borrowers are actually finding that because their utilization of credit limit was not there fully, or it was very abysmally small, so they could get only 20% of whatever that was utilized. On the contrary, those who had fully utilized, because here the provision is that SMA 0 and SMA 1 accounts are also eligible. So that means somebody who had not repaid even up till 59 days actually is gaining, and those who are maintaining their accounts in a judicious, disciplined manner are the ones who have lost out heavily. And issue here is that 29th February was actually not a time that anybody could have ever imagined that this kind of catastrophe is actually befalling them, because effectively most of the country came under lockdown on 22nd, and entire country came under lockdown on 25th. March, being the last month of the financial year, again has its own peculiarities, when people want to do lots of cleaning of their balance sheets, whatever their outstanding payments, they have to be cleared, and they found themselves completely choked. And when finally this ECLGS scheme was announced in May, everybody thought that perhaps they would be gaining, because it would ultimately be 20% of their sanctioned limit. But what it turned out to be was there was a cutoff date. This anomaly needs to be addressed now, and perhaps we should be looking at Mr. DS Singh is here. Perhaps he would be in a position to address this. How could then this be addressed, that instead of having a cutoff date, this should be 20% of the sanctioned limit of the MSME. So that would address the grouses of almost all MSMEs, and there should not be any issue thereafter. And second thing, if time permits, sir, I would like to refer to one more thing.
Do be brief, because we are really running out of time.
Yeah. So Jyoti ji, very interestingly, he pointed out to another provision in this Atmanirbhar set of announcements, in which he highlighted the provision of rolling guarantee provision, where guarantees were to be released to the extent of work completed. Now, what it has eventually turned out at the ground level, what the feedbacks that we are getting is several of our MSMEs who are actually supplying to CPSUs, central public sector undertakings, they are not accepting this announcement. They say that they are registered under companies, and this is basically for government agencies, that is essentially ministries and departments, and this would cover them, and therefore they are refusing to accept this and releasing their guarantees. So this also is an anomaly, perhaps, which inadvertently has crept in, which should also be addressed. Thank you.
Ms. Singh, would you like to comment on this?
Actually, Mr. Mehra has very clearly brought out a issue, and I entirely agree with his views. We will take it up. We will take it up with the DFS on this issue.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. As we come to the end of the session, lovely having all of you. Mr. Ashok Sehgal, would you kindly sum up the session, please?
Yeah, certainly, Mr. Somani. Thank you very much. First of all, my sincere thanks to our chief guest, Mr. Devendra Kumar Singh. He has spent considerable time with us, explaining his own views and understanding firsthand what we as MSMEs have to say to him. And he has promised a lot of actions, and we look forward to more closely working with him from CII and assuring of full support of providing industry inputs, any analyses, etc., which will help the ministry in their decision making. The discussions today have been quite wide-ranging in a way, not just limited to finance, but overall operational problems. And I think everybody would have found them highly informative and help to understand what is happening with other MSME members and other players who are interacting with the MSME segment. The perspectives could be different, but I think our motive is the same. The motive is the same: to have MSMEs come forward, step forward in this hour of need, and ensure that we get back to a good economic health as soon as possible. And there is general appreciation that the government has been highly responsive. And as Mr. Singh himself has mentioned, they are open to further suggestions and inputs and would welcome them. And I hope our members would continue to provide them to us to channelize further to the appropriate departments of the government through the MSME. My sincere thanks also to Mr. Munjal for setting up a very stimulating context for understanding the overall financial situation which is affecting MSMEs. I think that really triggered off the context of all the other discussions in the panel. So again, they've provided valuable inputs, provided a lot of valuable information, as it was mentioned by Mr. Jinandan Shah, that what is required is for MSMEs to be aware of what is available to them and how to go about getting it. So that is very, very good, and for making this session possible, my sincere thanks to the PSB online loan portal, to Resurgent India Limited, and to BSE SME, Mr. Thakur, for partnering us as session partners, and for rupees.com as a project partner. Last but not least, thank you for all the participants for sparing your precious time, sending in your questions, and those that we have not been able to address, please mail them in, and we assure you that we will have them taken up and provide you with the answers which you seek. And thank you again for your valuable time and participation in this. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Somani.
Thank you very much to all. Stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaskar.
Thank you.